The Financial Planning South Africa podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. All discussion is limited to publicly available information and should not be interpreted as legal, professional, or financial advice.
Hi, I'm Louis van der Merwe, Certified Financial Planner. Join me every week where I get to have discussions with global leaders in the financial planning space to help you serve your clients better and run a more efficient financial planning practice. This is Financial Planners South Africa podcast.
Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion for people and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Portfolio Metrics is an authorized financial services provider. ComSpace is a revenue management solution developed specifically for independent financial advisors. It is a web-based application that tracks, allocates, and manages advisor revenue. The system seamlessly reads commission statements from financial institutions and can address any permutation of commission splits. ComSpace provides mind-blowing, out-the-box revenue business intelligence and analytics, along with super flexible reporting to effectively manage and grow your business.
Welcome to another episode of Financial Planners South Africa. So happy to have Bryan Nicol here in person. We are sitting in the conference facility for the FPI 2022 convention. And last night, Bryan won the award as the top PCE student for 2022. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
For people listening, they might not know what that means. And so today we can unpack a little bit your journey of becoming a certified financial planner. Okay. We can discuss why you chose to do that, what pathways you considered, what the journey was running a full-time business and dealing with clients and life carrying on in between you studying. And let's explore this wonderful, wonderful area.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
So congratulations. Let's unpack the award. So top PCE, what does that mean?
Yeah, so thanks very much. I appreciate it. It's so to get a CFP designation, you got to do professional competency exams. So for short, it's PCE, and you get 3 opportunities a year to write these exams. So at the moment, it's March, June, and September. So the exams consist of 2 different papers, 2 case studies, back to back, day after day. And you have to get a certain mark, 60% or more aggregate for those both papers. Once you've got that, you are then competent to be a certified financial planner. There's other things as well, like years of experience. You've got to have your postgrad and so on. But the PCE itself is kind of, in inverted commas, the boards, if you think of like chartered accounting terms.
Brilliant. I know Lelani from the FBI always talks about the 4 pillars, right? So education, ethics, experience, and the 4th one slips my mind. But this really is around the education piece, or examination. That's the 4th one, right? Which is the PCE component. Mm. So to get to that board exam, what studying routes can you take specifically in South Africa? Like, what are the options of exploring and actually getting to being able to write the PCE exam?
Yeah. So you've got to have a postgrad diploma in financial planning. That's just the minimum requirement in terms of education. So if you don't have a postgrad diploma in financial planning, you will then have to obviously study that at any sort of institution. But to qualify for that, you generally need an undergraduate degree, a commerce degree, LLB, or something like that. You can't necessarily come in with, a BA philosophies or something like that and do it, because you will just not be there numerically. I think your financial literacy won't be there. So to study the postgrad diploma, there are several options in South Africa. I think they're all great. They're all top universities. And I ended up studying at Millpark, and it was kind of funny. So I didn't have a plan to study necessarily, but I was going through some self-exploration in about 2020. And COVID hit, and I was contemplating advice and if I want to remain in the industry, so to speak, because it was just very transactional and I wasn't really fulfilled. And so I already then had my BCom, and I have an NQF5 also through Millpark, which was a nice like bridging course. It taught me what I needed to know to help people, connect people with products, but it didn't help me change lives in any sort of way. And so in 2020, lockdown comes and I start calling up financial planners who I see online and respect and so on. And I was starting to ask them about what they do, because I was trying to work out if I should commit to this profession of financial planning or not. And so long story short, I've interviewed some great people and I decided for myself, okay, I know what I want to do. It's financial planning, and a particular kind of financial planning. And I realized I want to be as good as I can be to be as academically and technically. I want to be a really sharp sword so I can be a really useful tool in my client's toolbox. So now there was now like a lockdown. So I started March, April, and then I had to start looking for universities. Post-grad, you would start January. So I was impatient and I thought, I was naive and I thought COVID will be done by the end of 2020. So if I can start studying somewhere now, part-time, like, after hours, I can maybe break the back of the post-grad in 2020 and then just finish off when we're back at work and all that. So I started researching universities. Like I said, there are several options. I won't list them all, but what was unique about Milpark is that they have a cycle system. So they have 5 cycles, I think it is, a year that you can jump into and start your postgrad in financial planning. It's not a January to June, July to December semester setup. It's a pretty intense course, but they do a module per 8 weeks. And so you can jump into your postgrad like in the middle of the year. And you start with your first module, which is induction. So I started, I think it was about August 2020. It's like the 4th cycle of the year or something like that. So that's how I started. So it was Milpark, their business model, the way they accommodate people. That was, that attracted me to the institution.
So Bryan, is that still sequential? So someone starting in January would do module 1, 2, 3. I mean, how many modules are there for?
So yes, it is sequential. So you can play around with the order that you do it in, but Milpark is a bit different. So personal financial planning. Okay, let me maybe take it back. So for anyone who doesn't know, postgrad in financial planning is traditionally 4 modules. So you've got financial planning environment, which is the tax and the law. No one likes that one. And then you've got personal financial planning, which I think is the giant. It's the big one. You've got corporates. And then you've got the case study, which is always last, and it sums everything up in a big, nice case study. What Milpark did was, which I think is extremely, extremely clever, is they took personal financial planning and they broke it up into 3 subjects. So it's risk and estate planning, retirement planning, and investment planning. And they go really deep with each of those subjects. Now, you have to start also with an induction module. So I don't know if the other universities necessarily have that, but the induction module helps you get up to speed in terms of, the law, tax, time value of money calculations, because you know what it's like. We don't necessarily sit with our HP 10B2 every day and do the amortization calculations and such. We've got software in that. So if you've maybe studied like I did, 2016, 2017, did my higher certificate. Now I'm 2020. There's been 4 years. I've forgotten some of this.
Gotten a bit rusty.
Yeah. So that module, it's compulsory, but it brings you right up to speed. And within 2 months, you're almost like you were studying before. Okay. And now you're running, and you have to be running to keep up the tempo that they have, because you can then say, okay, fine, induction. Maybe you do that in January. It's a cycle. So it's Jan, Feb. Then March, you start with your next one. And it could be, I think you have a bit of choice, risk and estate, corporate, whatever the case may be. And then so you go through the rest of the modules and you will always end off with case study. So there is freedom to also stop and pause. So if you want to do a cycle, a break, a cycle, a break, especially I think if you have kids and stuff like that, you might need to do that, unless it could become a bit of a divorce course if you try and do it all in one go. So it's a very unique model, but it worked for me. It was extremely high tempo, but they go extremely deeply as well. And I think that sets you up well for, the PCE.
It sounds really interesting the way they've structured it and kind of these cycles. And so is this a remote course or is this in person? Would you attend lectures or is it kind of watching pre-recorded videos of the lecturer telling you how this works?
Okay, so it's fully online, and Milpark's business model is an online institution. They do have per module, it's something like 2 or 3 sessions where you all kind of go on a call, a Teams call with the program lecturer, and they would take you through concepts, maybe an old paper or the general pitfalls for students. So they'll take you through all of that regularly. It's like 2 or 3 times. But it's online, so you can contact the lecturers or the tutors, they call them, directly on a portal that they give you, a student portal, and then you've also got each other to lean on as well to kind of get through it. Okay,
so it's a little bit more structured, because I just went through studying University of Free State, and they send you your study guides and your textbooks that you have to buy, and there you go. It's like, see you at the exam.
Yeah, that's interesting. Look, I think that is going to be tough for a lot of people who maybe don't have self-discipline. You do have self-discipline. I think this is your 25th qualification, so that's not a problem for you. But if you look at, you take the average person. I mean, you think back to when you were a full-time student, maybe.
Yeah.
Cramming was what it was all about, right? So you party, and then you cram. You have like stomach ulcer and migraines, and then you write, and then you're free again. When you're doing part-time, when you're working, and you can't afford to cram at the end, you're going to fail, because at this level, and I don't like necessarily saying the whole time at this level, but it's such big concepts, and there's a lot of detail within each large concept. You can't cram that. So what Milpark has done, which is quite unique, and I haven't seen it anywhere else, but they will have weekly assignments and or online tests. And so every week you'll have an assignment or test based on the coursework for that week. So you can't afford to build up a bottleneck. You really have to be on the ball, which kind of gave me a new way of studying as well. So you have to study consistently and constantly. So what they do is they do the weekly assignments and tests. And so that keeps you current. You have to consistently study and constantly study. You can't afford to say, well, I'm taking 3 weeks off, for some me time. That's just, then you should not have enrolled in that cycle. So it keeps you going, and it keeps the information very fresh in your mind, because you're calling it up the whole time, every week, for some form of test. So they do that like 6 weeks in a row. 7th week is no assignment, because the 8th week you write your exam. And so if you do back-to-back cycles, you write your exam, I think it was like a Monday or a Tuesday, and then your next module starts the next morning. And so there's no break. So you have to self-regulate. There's a lot of dependence on you being able to manage yourself when you, I think, study part-time. And I think that's for any institution. That's not necessarily a Milpark thing. Like you said, they just gave you a ton of books and said, God be with you. So you've got to fill in the blanks. And so I think, if you're an adult, you've got to decide for yourself, I'm investing in myself, and investment takes work. And that's how I viewed it.
I completely agree with that, because this seems to be targeted towards people that are already in the industry or profession, have built up a bit of experience, and are saying, I need to sharpen the sword and get a little bit better in these areas. What was your expectation in terms of the amount of time and energy and effort that this would take? And I'm going to tell you why I asked that, because when you study for your CFA exams, they send you the textbooks, but with that you get a few postcards. And those postcards would have a dog, a very sad looking dog with a leash, saying, well, you're not going to have time to walk your dog. Your friends won't understand this. I think they show like a picture of a fridge just with a ton of...
So morbid.
Yeah. So it's saying you're going to have to commit a lot of hours in this. So what was your expectation before jumping into this, and now looking back, and did those align?
Yeah. So I got a bit of a shock when I registered. I know that they kind of, in the literature that the institution had, they talked about it's high tempo and you need to commit. But I don't know if they can really sell that. You've got to actually start and then work out for yourself how this is all going to pan out. So when I registered and I was admitted, they sent me all the schedule. And I got the schedule and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be intense. So what I did was, I think the first night, my first study night was actually, let's just wrap my head around how I'm going to do this, because I work a small advice firm. So, I do everything almost myself. And so I need to work. I've got a wife. I've got life commitments, friends, family, church. And I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because every week there's a test, every week there's an assignment, and they will say chapters 1 to 5 do this week, and then at the end of the week there's an assignment. So I realized that I needed to be very disciplined. So I came up with what I call a rules-based approach to life, which I've actually started using in my life in general. And I got it from investing. So you get rules-based investments where you stick to a checklist, you stick to your process, you don't let outside noise distract you from the mission. So what I came up with is I decided, let me set an agenda in place, a schedule in place for myself, and stick to that and create that rule. And so what I looked at was Monday evenings, Tuesday evenings, and Thursday evenings, I will study. Saturday days and Sunday days, I will study. And that is it. I will work until 5 p.m. every day, and I won't work thereafter. And I cannot work on the weekends. So, and those were my rules. And what I mean by rules is that you kind of have to decide that time for work, for instance, 6 p.m., deadline, meetings in 2 days' time, that time doesn't exist. 6 p.m. doesn't exist. It's up to 5 p.m. So if you can't do it between maybe 8 or 7 and 5, then you postpone those meetings. You manage your clients or your colleagues' expectations. Similarly for social engagements. If I say I'm studying on a Saturday, it would always be like from 10 until about 5 with breaks in between. A Sunday would always be after lunch and church. So until about 5, and never on a Friday and never on a weekend night. In my life, I've never studied on a Saturday or Sunday night. But the Fridays I did study when I was on study leave, which makes sense. Now, it's a bit weird because you get the invite from the friends. We're going to the wine farm, on the Sunday at 10 a.m. or something, and you think,
come on, Ryan, break your rule.
Yeah. I mean, birthdays and stuff, I had to say, look, I know you guys are meeting at 2 o'clock to watch the 3 p.m. kickoff, and then you're having a braai. I'll come for the braai. There's a game on. But I made a rule. And so I stuck to those rules. And it's very difficult in the beginning. But if you string, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks together like that, you've formed a habit. And if you string a month or 2 together like that, you've actually just got a new lifestyle. And so for me, my lifestyle became living in boxes, if you want to put it that way. I was in the work box. I was in the spend time with my wife box, and I had study boxes. And I would jump from each box to each box on schedule. And I think that is how I was able to, stick to the coursework and never really feel like I was behind the curve. I always felt like I was generally in touch with where I wanted to be in terms of the workload that we were doing.
That's such a great concept. And, for me that prefer more flexibility, that sounds very rigid. And I think people listening to this might say, well, I'm going to try it and see if it works. Like, do you think this is something that will work for everyone, or you work backwards and say, hey, this is my strength. I don't operate in the evenings when I need to study. I have these boxes.
I think it worked for me, because I don't have children, firstly. So I didn't have to be at 9 p.m., helping to change nappies or anything like that. There were students who I studied with, we're all in these forums together, and they said, I have children, my husband isn't necessarily that active in the family life, so I'm doing everything, and I only study on a Saturday and Sunday. So it's like, I think it's horses for courses. However, I would argue on paper, this will work perfectly for anyone. But we don't live on paper, So at the end of the day, I think you've got to understand to yourself what your schedule is. Like, for instance, I didn't say Wednesday evening study. The reason why is because, I have church on a Wednesday evening and church activities. I'm not going to compromise that. So but someone else might have something else. They might have a book club, or they might have a dinner club. That's a nice thing to keep because it gives you a break. I had a rule, never study on a weekend night. If I'm 6 p.m. on a Saturday or Sunday, and I don't have the information in my head, I'm not going to get it at 8 p.m. I can tell you that now, because I've probably been studying for 5 hours. So you need to call it. So what anyone can probably do is look in their life and say, it's like a budget. What are the essentials, the must-haves, the like-to-haves, and the complete cherry on top, the luxury items. And you can pretty much break your social life and your work life down into those categories. And once you start rearranging those and putting them into those kind of boxes, you can say, well, look here, it really would be cool every Saturday to still go out to those wine farms or to, and I'm Cape Townian, so I'm using wine farms. I don't know what they do in Joburg, but, to do all these activities. But unfortunately, you only have so many hours in a day and so many days in a week. And you've got to divide those up accordingly. And so something in your life will suffer, but it doesn't need to suffer for a long time. You can go back to that once you're done. But if you commit the time, I'm pretty confident you will come out successful and you'll be back to normal in no time.
It's very similar to like a training schedule, right? We have a race coming up. This is what we need to put in, and these are the blocks, and that's where you train. So now that you have these rules for life and you're not studying anymore, kind of what's filled that? Do you have other rules in place now for these gaps, or?
Yeah, so initially, when I wrote when I was at March this year, so after March, I did not know how people live with so much time. I could not understand. So for the first month, I just didn't want to do anything. And you must realize that I did my postgrad and I finished it at the end of 2021. Then immediately got into the PCE studies, and I wrote that in March. And for the PCE studies, by the way, just to go back quickly, academic, you have those assignments and stuff. PCE is kind of like, here's the stuff, here's the work, here's old papers, see you on the day type of thing. So you really do need to manage yourself there. But I had the same schedule. I kept the same rules. So I kept that in place regardless. Afterwards, it was weird. Life had changed. My lifestyle was now different. But I've started filling up. I gave myself 3 or so months of relaxing, maybe catching up on some series or whatever. But I'm reading a lot in those times now. And I'm also working a lot on, plans for the business in the future, my career, because there are things that I want to accomplish. And I was so used to using a lot of that time for studying. I would hate to use that time for Netflix. I'm using it for reading, and I'm using it to try and develop myself further.
Bryan, I work with a Gallup certified strengths coach. His name is Johan, and I'm sure Johan's listening to this. And he always says that the most successful people in life dedicate at least 5 hours a week to self-improvement. And it sounds like you have now structured those pillars to say, how do I make myself better? How do I show up better? How do I show up better for my clients? But we don't live in isolation. So kind of what was the support around you? I mean, in terms of family and friends and businesses, were they saying you're going off on a tangent here and this is unnecessary, and kind of almost like crabs in a box and trying to pull you down, or were they quite supportive?
No, everyone was supportive. Everyone was very happy that I was studying further. My wife, she doesn't understand how I could just, like, after dinner in the evening, 7:30, I would always start studying. Almost mid-conversation, I would just like a robot just get up and say, I must go. And then just turn around and walk to the office and close the door. So she was sometimes saying, are you sure you want to study? And, but she's extremely supportive. So she helped me a lot. Like I said, we don't have children, so it was easier on me in that respect. Family, otherwise supportive. Friends, the invites came, and I was turning quite a few things down. And then the invites, dried up a little bit because people were like, he's just going to say no. So I made a joke with my friends after I graduated, or after I finished my PCEs. I said to them, okay, hi, my name's Bryan. And I just had to kind of reacquaint myself a bit, because a lot of people like to do social things on a weeknight, and it was just not available. So there was a lot of support. No one tried to pull me away from studying. But I think some people thought I was a little bit extra in how I was just keeping my head down. But I was determined. I want to do the best I can do for my clients, and I want to be super successful. I know what life I want to live. I know how many clients I need to have to pay me to live the life I want to live. And I know that I need to be really good at what I do. And so the rest of my life kind of depended on it. So there was enough motivation for me to give it my all.
Like living that life of excellence, not just mediocrity.
Yeah, we've only got one shot.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, sometimes we can blame external things, and yes, life does happen, right? You have to juggle. But if you put your head down and you have the support and you have the resources, I think it's phenomenal what happens, and the award that you've received is testimony to that. What is the reaction from your clients, Ben? Do they know that you've been on this journey? And
some of my clients noted that my email signature changed. I've got a comma CFPR,
superscript.
Yeah, superscript. Yeah, I had to work out how to do that. So a couple of guys asked about that. But during the journey, there was times when there was out of office on my email, I'm study leave or whatever, and there were inquiries about that. But I haven't necessarily publicized it per se. We haven't sent out circulars to clients to say, look, Bryan has now upskilled himself or whatever. But I do know for a fact that they can see the difference. When I was studying a postgrad, you finish a module and you just say, wow, I thought I knew a bit. I didn't really know much. Now I know a bit more. And you start using that in your life with your clients, and it adds immediate value. So even if you don't have the paperwork yet, you haven't finished the case study module or whatever, you know what you know already. No one can take that from you, and then you can start giving that to your clients. So if my clients weren't necessarily informed by me in like a circular, they would have seen it because I reinvented our financial planning process based on it.
So there's been this shift away from the technical side, right? I was on a panel yesterday around the psychology of money, and everyone's talking about coaching. Everyone's talking about the softer side of things, but yet we're saying the technical elements are important, and we're going through these examinations. How do those two balance out?
Yeah, it's extremely tough, and it's extremely tough to balance them out, because you might think you get something like the CFP, and you think technically I'm there now and I can switch my brain off. I never have to study again. Listening to your talk yesterday, and I must admit prior to that, I've been reading about this a lot, and I just realized, the work has begun, because the coursework we do is very technically orientated, and I think that's fine. You need to know what you need to know to do what you do, and to make the impact in the lives of the clients. We are first and foremost technicians. And like you rightfully said yesterday in the panel, we are not therapists. However, to get the best, if you're a technician, you're really super interested in getting the best quality information from a client. Now, you can't say, fill out a form, come back to me, I will use this and put it into my machine and spit out a plan for you, when you know that the reason why someone maybe wants to invest aggressively, or the reason why they just hell-bent on getting 30 million rand life cover. Why? Now, you might say, oh, okay, I can easily do that, do a bit of a focused single need financial plan, but you're not really using your skills, and you're not doing good financial planning because you don't have the proper data. The data is unfortunately not going to come on black and white. It's going to come in words. And you're going to have to work out yourself what that means. So what I will often do with clients is I'll ask them, okay, well, why do you believe you need 20 million rand life cover? Or why do you believe you need to invest everything in an offshore fund or something? And so you get to the bottom of it, several questions later, and you realize it's just fear. They had a life experience. Maybe a family member died, their parents died, and they had no life cover. And now they're paying bills, that type of thing. And so you realize that it comes from generally places of vulnerability or fear. Now, that is brilliant data to work with as a technician, but you can't get that out just trying to apply ratios and calculations. You need to have other skills. And so that is why I said it's only just begun, I think, the work, because you're a certified financial planner professional. You've got technical skills that are, of the best in the industry potentially. But now you need to know how to use those skills. And you're working with people. You're not working with case studies. And a case study tells you everything you need to know. And a person sometimes sits opposite you. And while they're talking, they just break down in tears. And you realize that, you need to maybe consider a bit more, even if it's not formal qualifications, pick up some books and read about this, because I'm doing that now. My journey into that is just starting. And it's eye-opening, and it's extremely humbling as well.
For someone that's curious of this journey, like, what book would you recommend for them to start? Or
Sure. Like I said, it's just starting for me right now. But I think that I've just got a book that's So I'm trying to firstly understand why people make decisions the way they do. People sometimes come to you very confidently and say, you must do this for me. And the first I wanted to understand, where is this coming from? So I spoke to a mentor of mine. He's an investment professional, and he gave me a book that is opening my eyes. I'm busy reading it now. It's by Annie Duke. It's called Thinking in Bets. And I know you've read it before. And it gives you an idea as to why some people make the bets they do. And every decision is a bet. You're betting against an outcome or for an outcome. And so I decided that would be my first journey into it, is just trying to understand people it's also kind of very anecdotal. It's not necessarily a research-based book. Over and above that, I've read a lot of articles and listened to a lot of podcasts from, you've interviewed quite a few of the guys already, Dr. Klantz, and there are various professionals who talk about money behaviors, why we do the things we do. And it's not just behavioral economics, biases, but it goes a bit deeper than that. And so I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. My coursework or my study work in that field has not began yet, but there are a few books I've got lined up. I would just, first and foremost, the easiest way is listen to a podcast about it and realize that financial planners out there, as super experienced and successful as they are, they're having serious doubts about their ability to service their clients well into the future. And I think you've experienced that too. And so that is why you've got in touch with that human side of money. And I believe it's essential for me to go down that route as well.
You have such a nice way of positioning these things, and I can hear that you've thought about it, you've thought it through, you clearly can communicate. And so for people listening to this, I'd also add Dan O'Reilly's books to this, like Predictably Irrational. And for me, that was so entertaining, thinking about how we all, not just clients, how we all suffer from irrational decision making, right? We think we're these rational humans that's going to invest for the long term, but yet we derail our own financial plans. Part of our discussion ended up around you having a financial planner, and it's not often that we speak to financial planners that have their own financial planner. She's been a guest on the podcast. Would you be keen to share some of your own experiences or just a vulnerability around a financial planner going to another financial planner? Like what sparked the need for that?
Yeah, this is quite an interesting story. So Mary was the first person I ever called when I started interviewing planning. The reason is because I started reading about books about lifestyle financial planning. And that started because I was on a journey of what else can I do excepting help people find products. And so I Googled lifestyle financial planner, Cape Town. And Mary, if you're listening, you feature highly on the Google ranking.
Your SEO is on par.
SEO is on par. So I found her and I just called her one day. I think it was like March or April 2020. It was literally lockdown. Herself and another great financial planner. I'll mention him. I hope he doesn't mind. Greg Snedden, top-notch guy. And so I interviewed them both, and I really like Mary's approach. And she focuses a lot on the person, and the money is important, but it always follows the person. Money doesn't lead the person. So I thought to myself, okay, fine. I'll always remember the conversation I had with her. It was very enlightening. And I read over the notes that I took in an interview that I had with her about what
were the questions you were asking? Sorry to interrupt you, but when you were analyzing your subjects here, like what questions did you ask? Can you remember any?
Yeah, like what do you do? Why do you do it that way? Where did you come from? Where do you want to get to? Why do you, and then that would normally lead to questions. Oh, I used to work at this company. Why don't you work that way anymore? Oh, I had these problems and then I realized they did what I did years ago. They had the same questions, the same itches that needed to be scratched. And I realized that I wasn't alone. So I was just super curious. I was curious because I realized if I was thinking this thing, there are like how many billion people in the world, there must be other people that have thought this too. I don't know if anyone ever has a truly unique thought. So I was looking for people who've had the thought already, and aware of the fact that I'm not 21, 22, I am now 40 years old. So I thought I need to speed up my progress. So hence go to people who can maybe be mentors for me and tell them, give me everything. I just wanted everything. I just say, give me what you have. I would love to learn. And the people that are true professionals, they give. The people that are not, they close off. The cards are close to the chest. And I picked it up.
Secrets.
I've spoken to several people, and some people not open about what they do. Other people say, look, this is how my plan looks. Look, this is my process. And to me, that is amazing, because that's the only way you will advance the profession. And so, to come back to your question, a few months go by, and I told my wife about Mary and how she works. Very keen, very interested in hearing more about it, just as a general a fascination with the industry. And then my wife went through some issues. She got retrenched during COVID, as did, I think, half of South Africa. And there were some massive financial decisions to make. And I was helping my wife, but I was helping my wife after hours when I had a little bit of time. And remember, I'm studying as well. And then one night over dinner, my wife says to me, do you treat all your clients like you treat us financially? And I said, what do you mean? She says, well, we got big decisions to make and you don't really give us the time of day. You helping everyone else. And it's that whole, cobbler's shoes are always broken and, plumber's taps are always leaking. And I realized that I was so busy trying to help other people and do my work and just keep my head above water, that I was ignoring our own financial situation. And my wife had just experienced a massive trauma, and she actually wasn't getting the help she needed to get through retrenchment from a job that she was super passionate about. And she said, can we speak to Mary? And I was like, are you firing me? And she says, well, you're not doing anything anyway. And I thought that's actually super true. And I said, I want someone to hold the mirror up to me and to hold me accountable. Going through that experience with Mary was transformational for me. It's always going to be important for me in my life and my career. I learned a lot from that, heavily inspired by her in many respects. I'm not a coach, though. I do like coaching conversations, but I am not a coach, and once again, not a therapist. But what she, the way she works, and many other planners also work like that globally, it's to tap into, the reason behind everything. What is your purpose? What is this journey that you're on? Where are you going to? Why do you need the money at all? And so it was very enlightening for me to go through that experience. That's also further for me reaffirmed a couple of things. The journey I'm on, or I was on, to study further in that, it made it more important for me, because I realized I need to do this kind of stuff, but I want to be as technically astute as possible. But furthermore than that, she showed me the value of planning, because I experienced it. And I think that is why I have no qualms at all talking to clients about how valuable financial planning is. Because for me, I don't need confidence to speak to clients now about what we do as financial planners. I know what we do. I know it's just as, as factual as the fact is I'm sitting on a chair right now. The planning that I'll do for you will add value. And I know that because I went through it. I don't think many financial planners have been through a financial planning process themselves. And I now know, I'm sorry to say, I don't think you can create a truly immersive, engaging client planning process if you haven't gone through one yourself. You are just going to become almost, I think, slightly hypocritical. And so we need to submit ourselves to a planner and say, please plan for me. Someone who you feel comfortable with, and so that you can understand what it's like to be on the other side of the desk, so to speak.
Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, what strikes me is that you didn't respond to say, no, but it's fine, I'll sort it out, or, hey, I'm not charging you for this. I'm taking control of the finances. Was that your initial reaction, or was it just, oh, wow, well, she has a point. My wife has a point, and let's go see someone.
Yeah, my initial reaction was almost like shock, like, you're accusing me of not, but then, as I was saying that, I'm like, you're right. I don't understand what you need to hear. I don't know what you need to hear now financially. I mean, you're getting a severance package. You've been in the company for over a decade. So that's a windfall. That is a conversation on its own. You've lost employment. You're going to have to become self-employed. thank the Lord, it's all been super successful. My wife is very happy where she is, and she's doing what she loves now, working for herself. But at the time, I mean, it's traumatic. You're losing a limb, kind of. And so I just realized I'm not equipped to help you, but I'm seeing clients who are going through the same thing. I did retrenchment counseling sessions during COVID, and I learned a lot from what we did with my planner, with Mary, and I got my own notes from that. In my experiences, what I felt, I took, and I started speaking to clients, bringing that into my meetings.
Was that a counselor that you saw to train you around it, or?
No, but, if you take someone like Mary, and I know you're also studying coaching, the coaching conversation is very empowering. It's not a therapy session, and it's not a grieving session or whatever the case may be, but it kind of gives you the tools to make decisions that you need to make at this point in time. And I think the conversation will be different for every circumstance and every person. Financial planners, we will probably have this similar conversation with everyone. And we will try and put them through the same 6 steps of a process. And if they're not ready to get there, we're going to kick them through the door and say,
it's their fault.
Yeah, it's their fault. Yeah. But the bottom line is that I didn't feel I was equipped to deal with that level of trauma. And my wife, I mean, it wasn't grieving per se. No one died, but it's just a case of there's something big happening. And that happened to 600 or so of her colleagues. So there were a lot of her colleagues who came to me, and I had to help them decide what to do with 20 years worth of retirement savings in a company fund or whatever the case may be. And so I was having those discussions with other people, but I wasn't having them with my wife. But at the same time, I think I was just too close to it, My wife is super strong, so if I say, yeah, walk it off, you'll be good, she didn't need to hear that. And she didn't, from our planner, she didn't get counseling. But what we did get was the tools to assess the situation and to make some really good, high quality decisions based on where we were. That wasn't in my coursework. And that is why, once again, the work for me has just begun, because everyone goes through a lot of stuff in life. And Mitch Anthony talks about up to 50 or 60 major life events. And, so you plan, but life happens. And I think it's super valuable. I've seen, being on the receiving end of that advice, I know 100% factually that it's valuable to have that as a planner in your armory that you can call on when you need to.
That's such a beautiful way to end. Bryan, thank you so much for being here. All the best for the future. I know this foundation that you've laid is going to be immensely strong and make a difference in hundreds and thousands of clients' lives over your career. And I look forward to building our friendship.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.